Hey guys, Spook here. Before this video starts, I thought it'd be best just to give a disclaimer. For those of you who don't know, Unit 731 was a prison slash experimental laboratory that the Japanese used during World War II, in which they used human test subjects. For that reason, this video is going to contain themes of things such as torture, human experimentation, death, prison people being held in captivity, and sexual assault. So if any of those things are going to bother you, I would not recommend watching this video. However, if you're okay with that stuff, then I really hope you enjoy. I'm not going to be showing any graphic imagery. However, I will be talking in depth about what actually happened to the prisoners within Unit 731. So with that being said, let's get to the video, and I hope you enjoy. War is hell no matter what. Millions have perished and will perish from the conflicts of war. However, as war is hell, it gives opportunity for some of the most evil and depraved people ever to live to take power. When you think of the Second World War, you will probably think of the Nazis first when thinking of wartime atrocities. And while Germany's National Socialist Party housed some of the truly dark and demented figures, such as Joseph Mengele or Adolf Hitler himself, as the architects of the Holocaust, the Nazis killed millions with their worldwide purge of what they considered to be undesirables. And while the Nazis will forever be remembered as a hateful and evil power never to be repeated, they were not the only people committing heinous acts to innocent people. Unit 731 was a covert biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army that engaged in lethal human experimentation during the Second Sino-Japanese War and World War II, this period of time being from 1937 to 1945. Unit 731 remains infamous for being responsible for some of the most notorious war crimes committed by Japan or any country during World War II. The former test site was housed in the Pinfang district of Harbin, the largest city in the Japanese puppet state of Manchukuo in what is now northeast China. So where did it all start? Unit 731 was originally set up by the Kempeitai military police of the Empire of Japan, but it was later taken over and commanded until the end of the war by General Shiro Ishii, a combat medic officer in the Kwantung Army. Built in 1935 as a replacement for the Zongma fortress, to which Ishii and his team would later use to expand their capabilities in human experimentation. The program received generous funding from the Japanese government until the war ended. As stated previously, the researchers of Unit 731 routinely conducted tests on human beings in order to research fields such as biological weapons testing, production, storage, and deployment. To just give you an idea of how little the prisoners within Unit 731 were cared for, they were referred to by the staff as logs, further dehumanizing and disregarding the prisoners, that they were literally referred to as inanimate objects to be used and then disposed of. Many different types of experiments were conducted within Unit 731 on the prisoners. These included anything from testing things such as the body's reaction to extreme temperatures, to testing explosives, chemical agents, biological agents, and more. A special project codenamed Maruta used human beings as experiments. These test subjects were gathered from surrounding populations and were, as mentioned earlier, euphemistically referred to as logs, which was used in such contexts as how many logs fell, which is disturbing to say the least, meaning how many logs fell is code for how many people died today and shows just how little the people within Unit 731 mattered to the researchers. There are two accounts I could find as to where the idea to call the prisoners logs come from. One is because the story given to the local authorities as a cover was that it was a lumber mill. So Unit 731, instead of being an actual government testing facility within this puppet state, they just told the local authorities of Manchukuo that it was a lumber mill in order to keep prying eyes away. Another is an account of a man who worked as a junior uniformed civilian employee within Unit 731 who said that the project was codenamed Holzklotz, which is the German word for log. These deceased subjects, or logs, were then disposed of via incineration. The test subjects themselves were chosen to give a wide cross-section of the population and included things such as common criminals, captured bandits, anti-Japanese partisans, political prisoners, the homeless and mentally handicapped, and anyone rounded up by the military police for alleged suspicious activities. Sadly, this came to include pregnant women and children and the elderly. The members of Unit 731 included approximately 300 researchers, including doctors and bacteriologists. It should also be noted that most, if not all, of these researchers had become desensitized to the cruel experiments they were doing due to previous experience in animal testing research. Because I guess if you're experimenting on animals and being cruel and horrible to them, it might not be that big of a jump to be able to do it to humans, which, yeah, I can kind of see that. Prisoners had things done to them, such as being injected with diseases disguised as vaccinations to study their effects, meaning they were purposely infected with something and then just left to rot and fester just to see what would happen. Male and female prisoners were also purposefully injected with syphilis and gonorrhea and then studied. Sexual assault from guards was also common, unfortunately. One of the main experiments and research that Unit 731 took part in was that of vivisection. For those that don't know, vivisection is defined as surgery conducted on a living organism for experimental purposes, which for the unfortunate prisoners meant things such as being injected with diseases to then be cut open and have organs removed to study while still being alive. Prisoners also had limbs amputated in order to study blood loss. Those limbs that were removed were then purposely reattached to the opposite sides of the body, again just out of a morbid curiosity. Others had their stomachs surgically removed and had their esophagus reattached to their intestines, and parts of organs such as brain, liver, and even lungs were also removed from prisoners. Unit 731 were also involved in the research, development, and experimental deployment of epidemic-creating biowarfare weapons in assaults against the Chinese population, both military and civilian, throughout World War II. Plague-infested fleas, bred in places such as Unit 731, were spread by low-flying planes upon Chinese sittings, including coastal Ningbo and Shanghai, between 1940 and 1941. This killed tens of thousands of people via bubonic plague epidemics. An expedition by these researchers to Nanking involved spreading typhoid and paratyphoid germs into the wells, marshes, and houses of the city, as well as infusing them with food, which was then handed out to the Chinese population. Epidemics soon broke out, and much to the delight of the researchers, it was determined that paratyphoid fever was the most effective of the pathogens. It's believed that at least 12 large-scale field trials of biological weapons were performed, with at least 11 Chinese cities being attacked by these biological weapons. The researchers also tested these diseases as well as others on prisoners such as bubonic plague, cholera, smallpox, botulism, and probably many more. This research led to the creation of the defoliation bacilli bomb and the flea bomb. These were used to spread bubonic plague. Some of these bombs were designed with porcelain shells, which was an idea proposed by General Ishii in 1938. The prisoners were also, unfortunately, used in weapon testing. They were used as essentially human targets to test various weapons such as grenades, in which they were used to test the effectiveness of the grenades from various distances and positions. They are also known to be tied to stakes and used as targets to test pathogen-releasing bombs, chemical weapons, shrapnel bombs with varying amount of fragments, explosive bombs, as well as bayonets and knives. So these people were literally just tied to a stake, defenseless, and at the mercy of these sick people. It's messed up. Some of the depraved experiments that was conducted within Unit 731 were things such as subjects being deprived of food and water to determine how long they would take to die. They were literally dehydrated and starved to death just to see how long it would take. Also placed into high pressure chambers until their eyeballs popped from their heads, which, yeah, that's terrifying. And as well as being experimented upon to test the body's reaction to things such as temperature and burns. Other things included being burned or buried alive, having venoms or animal blood injected into them, as well as desanguination, which means the prisoners were completely drained of their blood. Which again is one of the more notable experiments to come out of Unit 731 was Hasato Yoshimura's sick frostbite experiments. Hasato Yoshimura was an army engineer, and he conducted the experiments by taking prisoners outside and dipping their limbs in low-temperature water until their limbs froze. Once frozen, Yoshimura would then strike the limb with a stick, which would apparently sound like a solid board being hit when hitting the arm. The ice was then chipped away, with the affected area being subjected to various treatments, and I say the word treatments very loosely there, such as being doused in water and exposed to fire. This is just a testament to how evil this man was. He was described by the other researchers within Unit 731, bearing in mind these are also the same people conducting these other sick experiments. To them, he was called a scientific devil and a cold-blooded animal due to his seeming lack of any empathy conducted in his experiments, and that he conducted his experiments with a strictness which, if you're in a place full of sick people that are killing, maiming, torturing, and experimenting upon innocent people, and they think you're a bit cold-blooded, then Jesus Christ. Finally, and probably most disturbingly, sexual assault and forced pregnancy were used to test various diseases and how they were passed between a pregnant woman and her unborn child. I won't say much more about this. It speaks for itself. It's disgusting, and I feel a bit ill. In conclusion, at least 3,000 men, women and children were subjected to these sick experiments within Unit 731 alone. The reason we say at least that number is due to the testimony of former unit member Okawa Fukamatsu, who stated that the number itself was at least 10,000 and that he himself vivisected thousands, although this is hard to verify. No matter the number, the depravity and viciousness inflicted on prisoners within Unit 731 stands as a monument to how evil the human race can truly become, and stands as something to never be repeated. After Japan was defeated in the war, members of Unit 731 were granted immunity by the United States in return for exclusively sharing their research with them and not the Soviet Army as part of Operation Paperclip, which also included Nazi rocket scientists. However, it was later deemed that a lot of the research didn't amount to much, and the majority of experiments were just barbaric with no scientific merit. So, all of this death, all of this torture, all of these horrible, sick things being conducted, and they achieved next to nothing. It was all just for morbid curiosity with little to no scientific merit, which says all it needs to about how evil the people within that place really were. So that's the end of the story of Unit 731. And it says a lot about the way governments work, that these people who essentially participated in mass murder were given immunity despite most of their research being useless. But hopefully it will stand as a lesson to never be repeated, and the horrors of Unit 731 will never be unleashed upon the world again. And that's it for this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. I'm slowly getting more to grips with speaking into a microphone and editing, so hopefully this video turns out a little bit better than my previous ones. I'm using a new editing app on my phone as well, because I don't own a PC, because I'm a scrub. So hopefully that works out better. But I really hope you enjoyed this video, despite the very grim theme of it. But as a piece of history and as an example of an evil that can come to light in times such as war, I think this is a really good example of just how depraved humanity can really be if left unchecked. But that's it from me for now. This is Spook. You have been to the Spook Corner. Have a great day.